Okay, I have 4 blocks made right now, and at this point in time I'm going to be working with the fabric that I'm going to need to make the sashing that goes in between the blocks. You're going to need a certain kind of sashing for the blocks, and then you're going to need another kind of sashing for the rows, which is going to connect each row of the blocks. So we're going to first of all do the sashing that goes on the side of each block here, and then we're going to do a sashing that's going to be a long sashing that's going to go all the way across the row. So we're going to be doing a little bit of experimenting right now to put that black piece of honey bun in between each one. That one's going to be the only thing that's going to make this to be a little bit tricky. So I have here some nice broadcloth fabric that I'm going to use for my sashing. And then I also have this thing that's called a shape cut ruler. It's by June Taylor, and there's 2 different kinds that you can get. This one's just a regular one, and then there's one that's called the Shape Cut Pro. Here's the name up here. Which is a little bit bigger than this. So it's got slits in it that your rotary cutter can fit into. And the slits are every 1/2 inch. So when you're doing, you can make jelly roll strips out of this. You can make any kind of strip, as long as you have you need 1/2 inch increments, and you can make quite a few of them. Now what I did was I took my piece of broadcloth and I lined up the edge over here with the selvage, and the one end of the selvage is a little bit longer, but I've got it lined up. And then on this side I folded it, and on this side I have it lined up with one of the lines in my on my mat, so that I know that it's straight this way. Then I'm going to line up my beginning row where I'm going to make my first cut down here with one of the lines that's going this way on my mat. And also these black lines that are going this way help me to line up, to make sure that I've got the square when I'm cutting it. So that's the main thing that you need to remember, is you want to cut it square. So down here I have some edges that aren't straight. So first of all I need to straighten it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rotary cutter and I stick it in. There's a little teardrop opening down at the bottom. I'm going to hold it in place, and I'm going to cut across to trim that off. Now for this, I want 3-inch strips when I'm finished, so I'm going to start off with 3.5 inch strips. So that means that I'm going to sew 1/4 inch on one side and 1/4 inch on the other side, and that'll take my 3.5 inch strip down to 3 inches. So I'm going to look at my numbers. Here's 1, 2, 3.5, and that's where I'm going to put my rotary cutter to cut my first 3.5 inch strip. So here I go across. Okay, so my next 3.5. Well, I do know that it's going to end me up on 7. So here's 1 inch, here's 2 inches, here's 3 inches, here's 3.5 inches. So I'm on 7. And of course we want to make sure our body parts are out of the way of the rotary cutter. Okay, so I'm at 7. Now I need another 3.5. I think I can get that out of this without moving everything. So I have 1 inch, 2 inches, whoops, 2 inches, 3 inches, 3.5 inches. So put my rotary cutter in there, cut across, and now I'm as far as this particular one will go. But what I end up with are 3 perfect 3.5 inch strips. And it's got a little part there where I need to cut it apart, and so it's really easy to make straight strips when you're using this shape cut ruler. You can buy it at any Hancock, Joann, any franchise fabric store. They carry them, and usually people buy them when they have them on sale, or when they have a half off coupon on them, because they were about $25 regular price, but if you get it half off it's only $12.50. So that's really a convenient thing for all kinds of cutting. You can cut squares, you can cut strips, you can cut all kinds of stuff with this ruler, and they're really handy. So I'm going to make a few more strips for this whole thing. I won't need any more than what I just cut for what I'm going to show today. But this is really a great tool to have in your collection. If you are going to be doing a lot of quilting and you want to do things economically and cut your own fabrics, this is a good way of doing it. 10.5, right? Okay, I think I got enough now. There's 1, 2, 3. So these are all 42 inches wide, so they're probably going to be plenty wide. That's probably all I'm going to need. Okay, this is the piece that's going to be the side sashing. This one is going to connect the boxes together to form the rows. And it's a 5 1/4 inch long by 3 1/2 inch piece with our 1 1/2 inch piece inserted in the middle. And so I'm going to show you how I constructed that. The one thing that you will need to really focus on is to make sure that your pieces are sewed on really straight and line up with each other to make a nice straight line. I'll show you what I mean in just a minute when I get ready to sew the second piece. Sometimes it's just a little bit off and it won't end up being straight. It'll end up going straight up and then kind of curving off to one side, and you don't want to do that. So I've sewed the black onto one side, and now I'm going to kind of fold it back like this when I'm going to line up my second piece. And how I'm going to line up my second piece is I'm going to make sure that it's laying exactly squared up on top of the first piece that I sewed, so that when I open this up, it's going to be a very, very straight. So I found that this is the best way to line this up to make sure that you have a good straight piece of sashing when you're finished after you've pressed it open. So here we go, we've got it. I'm going to press this open, and then I'll have another piece of sashing that's going to go in between my blocks.